Are we on?
I think so, yes.
Well, we'll get started. I don't know whether there we go. All right. Well, we'll call the meeting of the Corpus Christi City Council to order on Tuesday, April the 14th. I want to say good morning to everyone out there, and I trust everyone had a safe and healthy Easter. It was beautiful weather, and appreciate everyone following the protocol on trying to stay safe and healthy, and hopefully this will be over sooner than later, but we're going to listen and continue to follow the experts' advice to make sure that we don't jump in and create more problems for us by being over anxious and excited about coming to an end. But let's get the meeting started, and I'll give us an invocation, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag and the Texas flag. Father, we're thankful that you've given us a new day. We're thankful that we have an opportunity to come together and discuss the city's business, even if it's in unconventional ways because of the crisis that we're facing. We pray that you would guide the doctors and the nurses and the medical technicians and the first responders and all those that are trying to meet the needs of those who are ill, as well as those who are well and trying to keep them that way. Be with us now as we deliberate the business of this city, as we continue to move it forward in spite of the circumstances in which we're dealing with. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Join me in the pledge of the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, Ms. Huerta, would you call the roll, please? And for those that, well, if you're viewing, you've got I don't know what you have on your screen. I've got kind of a blank on mine, but Ms. Huerta, if you'll call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Joe McComb.
Here.
Council members Roland Barrera.
Here.
Rudy Garza.
Here.
Paulette Guajardo.
Present.
Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter.
Here.
Ben Molina.
Present.
Everett Roy.
Here.
Greg Smith.
Here.
City Manager Peter Zanoni.
Here.
City Attorney Miles Risley.
Here.
Mayor and Council, a quorum of the council and the required charter officers are present to conduct the meeting.
All right, we'll start the meeting with our city manager's report and comments.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. We have a couple things to cover today, but we're going to have our health director, Annette Rodriguez, begin by giving us an update on COVID-19. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you. Just going to queue up. Okay, I guess while I'm waiting for the presentation to queue up, I just wanted to start out with the implications of public health mitigation. So community mitigation activities, we refer to them as NPIs, non-pharmaceutical interventions, are actions that persons and communities can take to slow the spread of infectious diseases. Mitigation strategies include the personal protective measures, hand washing, cough etiquette, and face coverings that persons can use also at home while in the community setting, social distancing. There it is. Let me get to it. There it is. Okay. Oops. Go one back. Also, social distancing, maintaining physical distance between persons in community settings, and also staying at home. Environmental surface cleaning at home and community settings such as workplaces. Actions such as social distancing are especially critical when medical countermeasures such as vaccines or therapeutics are not available. And so we see here some of those things that we just mentioned. the covering, the sneeze and cough, the wearing of the mask, the disinfecting, and the social distancing, of course. The next slide is the importance of social distancing. And the reason you see this slide is because it illustrates the evolution of the multi-phase turbulence, the cloud that suspends droplets emitted during a sneeze. And so I thought it was really important. I think we've all seen it, as children, the sneeze that just goes on and on and on forever and ever. And so this was a really good depiction. I like the one on the right because depending if you're outside, the wind's blowing, that sneeze can actually go further, and those droplets actually go further. And so another good reason for face coverings when you're out, even when you're social distancing or you're trying to stay as far away from an individual as possible, you never know when they're about to sneeze, and that sneeze can just travel. So what actually is the testing for COVID-19? We all have heard that you can have traveled somewhere, and that's, we've moved from that travel because there's been so many restrictions. So now you could also come in contact with somebody else with COVID-19 and be symptomatic, and you can be tested. Or you can actually have comorbidities and you have symptoms, so you can be tested for that as well. As well as you can have something that you don't know what you have. Something's going on with you, you don't know what you have, and so you can be tested because you do have symptoms of COVID-19 and you really can't figure out what else it could be. So if you develop emergency warning signs for COVID-19, you need to get medical attention immediately. And some of these emergency warning signs include the difficulty breathing or the shortness of breath, the persistent pain or pressure in the chest, the new confusion or inability to arouse, the bluish lips or face, and also one of the new signs and symptoms that we've picked up more recently is a loss of sense of smell and or taste. It seems like when you have that loss of sense of taste or smell, it seems like you do not have as a severe case of COVID-19 as others do, but it's an interesting symptom. If you think you've been exposed to COVID-19, you can always call the Health District hotline at 361-826-7200. So 2 ways of testing for COVID-19. So there's the local testing that we do at the local laboratory response network, the health department. So you must meet the CDC criteria. The test is performed through the drive-throughs, and then we actually do the testing at our LRN. And the drive-through sampling collection at the Memorial Hospital parking lot is done. For the commercial testing, it must be prescribed by a physician. The test is performed at a private laboratory. The sample is collected normally at the doctor's office or hospital, and it does not have to meet the eligibility criteria if they're using testing that they've actually created themselves. And so the testing entity here, I put it on the right-hand side, it's for the health district. We have tested so far 415 tests that we've actually run through the LRN. And then the hospitals, 634 tests for a total of 1,049 tests done here locally. This number is a little skewed. It's a little low because we still don't have the minor emergency numbers in here. They also run plenty of tests for us, and also the physician's offices. We don't have the physicians, how many are they running? I'm sure it's not nearly as many as the hospitals and the health district, but they still have a part to play in our community. On this graph, I've showed Nueces County the positives for COVID-19 cases since March 21st. And what you see here is you see the health districts in the blue and the commercial labs are in the red. So March 21st, the first case, it was from a commercial lab. If you look at March 23rd, it was the health district. There were 6 cases, and so on and so forth. So it's just to kind of show that both the health district and the commercial labs are working in tandem to come up with those positive cases. In the past, many times, more so than none, the commercial labs are actually the ones that actually do most of the testing, first of all. But this time was a little different. CDC started with the testing, and then it went down to the state health departments, so the Department of State Health Services, here in Austin, Texas. And then from there, it went to the local response networks, which there are 10 of in the state of Texas, and we have one here. We're fortunate enough to have that in Nueces County. And then it went to the commercial labs. So the commercial labs were kind of at the tail end, but they have a lot of capability, and they picked up very quickly. So you'll see the commercial labs will be doing a lot more of the testing. So finally, the statistics that we have, the travel-related, we have 36 travel-related. We have community transmission and person-to-person, a total of 38. We have under investigation 5. These are new cases that we're still contact tracing on, for a total of 79. If you look at the age distribution, it's very different from that of China. China had mostly the elderly population that was affected, and we have a kind of a disbursement of ages from all gamut, from 20 to 29 all the way up to 70 to 79 seems to be the age groups here that are affected. The gender, we have 52% are males and 48% females. In China, that was different too, because in China, you'd see 70% were males and 30% females. So in conclusion, as the COVID-19 pandemic spreads, the ability to assess the impact of mitigation strategy or reducing COVID-19 transmission will improve. Decreasing the number of new cases are needed to curtail the COVID-19 pandemic in communities and relieve those pressures of the healthcare system. A better understanding of the short and long-term impact of the community's disruptions that results from these measures is critical, and that's what we're looking at with our models. However, the NPIs, the non-pharmaceutical interventions to increase the social distancing when case counts are increasing, can be the most important tool for communities as changes in behavior result in decreasing the spread of COVID-19. If you have any questions.
You made a comment that the emergency clinics and the doctor's offices are not reporting.
We do not
Was that-
have those reports as of yet, so we are reaching out to them. We've reaching out to the Nueces County Medical Society to help us to get some of those numbers. In the past, negatives have never had to be reported, only positive. So they are reporting all their positive cases, but we're wanting all of the COVID-19 testing that they're doing, so we have a better denominator.
Well, I don't see Miles, but Mr. Zanoni, wasn't, in our order, when we required the commercial labs to report, didn't we also include hospitals and doctors' offices?
I believe we did, Mayor, yes. All entities should have reported to us. Miles, we were asking about the order for commercial labs to report cases to us.
Does that include doctors' offices and others, or did we just specifically say commercial labs? Because if it didn't cover it, then we need to change the order to require it, but I thought we covered anybody giving tests, basically. That was the intent. We just may have overlooked them, didn't realize that the emergency clinics were doing testing too.
I think they're more than willing to give those numbers. I think we just need to make sure that, that we get a hold of everybody so that they know to turn those numbers into us. So, because they are important for us.
All right.
Can I make a comment, Mayor?
Sure.
In regards to this same subject, I feel like that order was, when did you place that order? A week, 2 weeks ago? 2?
It's been maybe,
I think it was before then.
yeah, a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
2 or 3 weeks ago. So I feel like it's ample time, and we're really not getting, I guess there's that issue that you just brought up, which, is a valid issue. I could see, all of these numbers have to be reported to the CDC. So it's not like we're asking them to do anything more. I don't understand what is the reason. Is anyone calling saying, hey, we're waiting on this and we've asked you per order? The other thing alongside that would be all the actual labs, the private labs. They too have to report to other cities and directly they do that, as do they to the CDC and the government, which is the CDC, I guess. But I guess my point is it seems like since then, which has been weeks now, we can't sit here and say, yes, we are getting all of our numbers from private labs in from them directly. And we're not now this other issue with, the emergency ones. So, which is very, I guess it's, first of all, we need to get the right information. We need to have it and we need to get it out to everyone. Because a lot of people are asking, does it inclusively include these people? And why is it taking them so long to just to give us a number that they're already handing up to the CDC?
Okay, well, let her respond to that. Go ahead.
So I think part of that is just that in the past, they just have never had to give the number of tests that they run. They've only ever had to report. By law, they have to report communicable diseases. COVID-19 is a new communicable disease. So they have to report the positives, and they are doing that. So I think part of it is just that, they're very busy and that maybe they don't realize that they have to. Maybe they think we're getting it from the commercial labs or from somewhere else. But the way we're getting the numbers is through the hospitals and the LRN. And so we do need to get those numbers from them, and we are going to make every effort to make sure that all of them know that. The Nueces County Medical Society would be the best place to do that because they have a lot of members, and so those members will be getting the direct information from them, asking for those numbers. And then anybody that's not a member of the Nueces County Medical Society, they will reach out to them in addition. So, as well as the emergency medical care facilities, the minor emergencies.
Okay, Mr. Risley?
Okay, let me read what the order says. You asked, the order does appear to apply to everybody. It says all public, private, and commercial laboratories operating within the city of Corpus Christi that are performing COVID-19 testing shall report by 3 p.m. each day for the prior 24-hour period. Now, of course, it doesn't cover laboratories outside the city. It just covers laboratories inside the city, but that's our jurisdiction is only the city.
Yeah, but I mean, it said pretty much, we did require it. They just may not have, I don't know, but we'll pursue that. But that followed on the heels of the governor asking for those reports. So,
And all the commercial labs are reporting. The state of Texas has those numbers. I think the shortfall may be specific to Nueces County because we're just wanting for Nueces County specifically. And so, the physicians, if I was a physician and I heard that order, I would be thinking, well, if I'm ordering it through Quest, they're actually sending in the numbers. And it's not working that way right now. And so we're getting the number from the hospitals, how many they've ordered, also from how many we're running. And so we need the physicians to actually give us their numbers, and so not just wait and depend on the commercial labs to get us those numbers.
all right, Mr. Barrera? Excuse me, anybody else in the outlying areas that have a question? So, because I don't see a screen for you. In the conference room or anyone?
No.
We're good. No, not in here.
Okay, Mr. Barrera? I mean,
Nope.
I got my light on. Well, your name's not up, but let's just start this way. Do you have anything, Rudy? Let's just do it this way, because my mind's too slow to figure out numbers and faces here, because I'm trying to look the wrong direction.
Yeah, I like Paulette, I'm also getting concerns from private citizens that are talking about the fact that in some tables or some statistics, Texas ranks second in terms of testing for per million people. And so, again, in my opinion, the commercial labs, the private labs have to be reporting those numbers to somebody if we're providing some numbers to, say, for instance, to the rest of the country. And if they're not, then our numbers are, where we land statistically is inaccurate. Now, based on all the statistics, all the positive, all the percentages that we're finding based on tests, those are things that the leadership is going to be making decisions on as we try to come out of, I guess, of the economic, basically stalemate that we're in. And so again, it's critical for us to make sure that we have those numbers, and if we can't get them from the state, that we have to figure. I listened to the ordinance that he talked about, so I'm getting those numbers. But if they're only reporting positive numbers, that's not enough. We have to we have to stipulate that it's positive and total test taken. Otherwise, we're kind of in the dark.
That's true. And
Thank you.
they are reporting those numbers to the Department of State Health Services for the whole state of Texas. So all of those numbers are being reported. So those numbers are accurate for the state of Texas. We are also talking to Dr. Hellerstadt about getting those numbers for our counties, and he has promised us that we will be getting those numbers here very soon. So it's just a matter of making sure that the commercial labs break them down by counties, which there are a lot of counties in Texas, but breaking them down by county so we all have the right numbers.
Now, the other concern I had is just the number of tests that we've actually taken from Nueces County and City Health Department. The 434 tests seems a very, very small number, and is that because of the number of kits that we have available? Is that because of the resources we have? I mean, what is it that's keeping us from a larger percentage, I'm saying, of the population?
We could test a larger percentage, but we're going by the guidelines as well. So the CDC guidelines, until you open it up to be able to test everybody, you actually just have to, you're going to see those numbers continue to be a little bit smaller than what the commercial labs can test anybody. They don't have to be symptomatic and they can still test them. So we would love to know what everybody has, if they have antibodies to COVID-19 or not. And at some point, we're hoping here very soon, there'll be an antibody test that will be out, and then we'll be able to utilize that as well to be able to see who is positive currently and needs to be quarantined, who has antibodies and can be out in the community not spreading. So it's just, I think, a timing issue.
Can I just add to that, Councilman, just to
Sure.
kind of reiterate it, but Annette's team and Annette has to follow the state guidelines, which are kind of dictated by the federal guidelines. Our business is helping the community. We're not a private commercial testing entity who can test anybody who wants to pay.
Right.
So we have to follow the guidelines. Some of them are for reasons to include supply of the testing material, everything from taking the swab from the patient to then conducting the test in the laboratory. Supplies are short worldwide, and so some of the CDC and state guidelines, I suspect, are to manage inventories. And so we have to follow the strict guidelines to include who do we test. It has to be people just within Nueces County, within our jurisdiction. Actually, I guess it's a little bigger than Nueces, but so that's part of it, is making sure we have enough supply to test those that through a verbal questionnaire deemed appropriate to be tested. They've screened probably thousands of people, right? Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6,000 people
Yeah,
that we
they've
screened.
pre-screened because people know what the signs are, so they'll say, I'm shortness of breath, this and that, but then when they actually dig in and start asking other questions, they really aren't candidates for testing, and most likely they don't have the virus. So that's in part why some of those guidelines are put in place, to make sure those that are deemed by a questionnaire and verbal conversation with the consultants at the health department to be tested, they get preferential treatment. So
Now, are those guidelines or criteria being updated or changed as they get more information? I'm thinking about the 300 workers at that meatpacking plant up in South Dakota. I mean, again, it seems to me like,
They do change. So initially, it was really just specific to travel to China, and that's since changed, a long time ago, March, I want to say 16th, 20th, that changed to add some other areas, and then they also added the vulnerable populations, and then CDC also added if you have an etiology of unknown, so you don't know what the cause is, you can actually test them as well. So yes, they've opened it up. The guidelines have been opened up.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Melinda?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so of the total number of cases, we have 79 cases today so far that we know of. And you've made mention of the number of cases that were hospitalized, and you've also made mention of the number of cases where people have recovered. Where are those people that fall in between? The ones that aren't hospitalized and those that have not achieved recovery yet, but they have positive cases, are they self-quarantined?
It's a great question. Yes, they're still quarantined at home.
Okay.
So they have to be asymptomatic, and so we call them and we find out how they're doing. They have to be fever-free, so they have to be at least the 10 days. Most of them are a lot longer from the onset of symptoms to be fever-free, and so we're constantly monitoring them and asking them how they're doing to find out, once we find out that they meet the criteria to actually be considered for asymptomatic and to be released out of quarantine, then we ask that they come back through one of our drive-through collection site and get tested so that we can get a negative, because many of those, if not 100%, to be honest with you, want to donate to the convalescent plasma. So that's how we're doing it currently.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Councilman, I'm not sure if I heard you wrong, but it's the 79 total cases in Nueces County?
Yes.
17, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith?
Thank you. I'd just like to echo what everybody is saying about the importance of good testing data on there as we're looking at ourselves compared to other communities, and particularly the decisions that we make here. This testing data is very important with it. So if we don't have the right denominator, we're looking at the positive test rate or our test per million out there that, I think for our public policy, that's really important information. And for us and for the public, can you give us a current CDC guidelines today, Annette? So we're making that call to 882-70 or 826-7200. What are the guidelines?
So the guidelines are, if you've traveled somewhere where there's a high number of people that are infected, an example would be New York, Washington State, so an area that has a lot of infectivity, then, and you're symptomatic, you would.
Symptomatic, not or symptomatic.
And you are symptomatic, not
Okay.
asymptomatic. You are symptomatic. You have the symptoms. You would be eligible for testing.
Okay.
Also, if you came in contact with somebody that is COVID-19 positive and you're symptomatic, you would be eligible for testing. Also, if you are symptomatic and you have comorbidities, you're diabetic, you have heart disease, some other comorbidities, you would be eligible for testing. And-
Is age a criteria on that also?
Yes, it is.
So if you're over 65, is that a comorbidity?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So,
Thank
thank you for that clarification. And then
Yeah.
the final one is that if you don't know what is causing your illness and you have symptoms, you are eligible for testing.
Okay.
So, through the LRN.
Through the LRN, but anybody can go to a doctor, and if the doctor feels for whatever reason, that doctor has the option to
Most
do
certainly.
it. So if you're turned down through the LRN, the public testing, you can go to your doctor.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, thank you. And this is something that Councilman Molina kind of alluded to in terms of what is the requirement to be considered recovered.
Recovery is, so our criteria is that they've actually are feeling better and they've been fever-free for at least 3 days and they've been in quarantine for at least 10 days. So that's the Health and Human Services criteria that they use. We're also going a step above that, and we're also retesting, like I said, because 100% of them want to actually give blood. And so we're retesting them for a negative. And so to give convalescent plasma, you have to have currently a positive and a negative. Otherwise, you're not eligible to give. So they have to meet all of those criteria for us to be able to release them from quarantine.
Has there been any of these individuals who have not come in for their negative test or to be retested?
No, if anything, they want to come in too soon.
Okay.
They want to come in and get tested so that they can be negative and so they can get out of quarantine.
Okay, so I know on our update, our COVID-19 update that we have on the website, it does not show any recoveries. And
That's correct.
so I think it might be a thing to add for recoveries, because right now it just looks like the bad news and none of the good news.
Well,
Right.
good point. So, and I think that is
I
something
think,
we are working on.
We're looking at trying to get out of this. So we want to show people that have recovered and, maybe various stages of recovery.
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that. It should be by today. Yesterday was the first day we talked to the community in our press briefings. Peter Collins texted me this morning saying the dashboard will be updated. I presume that's today, hopefully by today.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, and I know I'd mentioned this to you earlier about what I'd had said last week about looking at start preparing for the eventuality of reopening businesses that were by the governor's order closed. And I hope that you're reaching out with the state, your state point of contacts, as to what those guidelines would be. I'm sure I would like to be prepared to where we can provide guidelines to community members and businesses as to what they can do to maintain some form of social distancing, yet still open for business.
That's true.
Just if you can comment to that.
Yes, so what we're doing currently is we've, like the city manager mentioned, we've reached out to Texas A&M, Corpus Christi. Dr. Miller has been wonderful in offering a lot of her staff to actually do some modeling for Nueces County, specifically for the coastal bend. And so we're looking at those numbers to see how we compare, to see, we all know that we weren't New York, so New York was one of the first states to actually be affected, like Washington State. And so we're looking at how we compare, when will we be ready? When is the right time to actually be able to go back to work, but continue to social distance, to do it in a phased approach and not to be able to, kind of jump the gun, if you will, and then have to go backwards. So, absolutely.
Okay. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So
That's right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a question when you're ready.
Okay.
Okay, Annette, could you give us also the definition of what investigation, what that actually covers?
Yes, so contact tracing or contact investigation, as it's sometimes referred to, is actually when you have the first case, you have the index case, as we call them, the COVID-19 positive. And then what we do is we pick up the phone and we start talking to them and we ask them, who all were you with today? It normally starts with what we call the concentric circle, which is their immediate family members. So they talk about their spouse and their children and who all they've been around. And then we go out further than that. So then we say, yesterday or the day before, were you with any other groups besides your family members? And so we try to kind of help them to recollect what has been happening over the last few days, because normally by the time we get the positive, they've been symptomatic for a few days prior to that time. Sometimes they've been 5 or 6 days. So they're really having to think hard what they've done. Now it's been a little easier because a lot of them are staying at home. But at the beginning, it was really difficult to think about. And so we also ask that they pull out their credit card statements and look at that, because sometimes that'll help jog their memory too. And they'll say, oh yeah, we went to HEB on this day. And so we look at that information as well. And so we try to reach out to all of the individuals that they have come in contact with while they were symptomatic and 1 or 2 days even prior to becoming symptomatic, because they may have been lethargy and didn't realize that that was a symptom of COVID-19. So we go back even a day or two prior to that time. And we reach out to every one of those contacts. We get numbers for them. We call them. We ask them if they want to notify these individuals or if they would like for us to. Most of the time they would like for us to. We keep that information anonymous, so we don't say so-and-so is positive and they came in contact with you. We just tell them that they came in contact with a COVID-19 positive individual, and so they need to be in quarantine for the 14 days. So we keep them in quarantine as well, again, just to mitigate the situation, contain it as much as possible so they don't continue to spread. If they become symptomatic, they are to call us back, and then at that time we can send them through the specimen collection drive-through and take the collection and find out if they're positive as well.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Zanoni, on your report? Appreciate it. Keep up the good work and
Thank you.
work yourself out of a job here if you can.
Oh, that's the goal. Thank you all.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to report just on a couple more things. I want to thank Annette, though, and her team. They continue to do great work, and they're working hard around the clock, Monday through Sunday. So thanks, Annette. Yeah. We'll see you later on today. Mayor, I just wanted to give the council an update on the small business recovery program that was approved last week, and then talk to you a little bit about our own business of running the city in terms of our budget and finance, what we're doing there. And then talk to you about an initiative Councilman Molina had to help thank our first responders. So with respect to that small business recovery program, we know last week City Council approved the program in a special council meeting aimed at helping small businesses recover in our city. The program was unanimously approved by council. It's a $2 million program, that provides loans to businesses, small businesses in Corpus Christi. And the council put kind of a new definition on the small business last week, and that was that a business's annual revenue shouldn't be any greater than 1.5 million. So a business that makes or pulls in 1.5 million or less a year would be eligible for the program. And the businesses also have to show that they've had a reduction in revenue of 15% since March 1st. So with the 1.7 million that's available for direct loans, the rest is for administrative overhead. Between 60 to 80 small businesses would qualify, depending on the loan type. A company can ask for 15,000 and up to 25,000. So another thing too that the council prioritized last week is to have the LIFT fund give priority preference to businesses that were most or are being most impacted by the governor's stay-at-home orders, to include businesses like restaurants and bars and nail salons and beauty shops as an example. The loans, as I mentioned, do range up to value of $25,000. The great thing about them, though, is it's a 0% interest for the life of the loan. That would be repaid in 36 months. And there's a deferment of the first 4 months payment. So nothing is due for the first 4 months, and there's no interest in the loan. The city's taking care of that part for the small businesses. It is intended that once a business's application is complete, 100% all the paperwork's turned in, there would just be 10 days to process the payment of the loan check. And so it's a quick turnaround time, much quicker than than other governmental entities, the federal government and the state government. So since last week, the LIFT Fund call takers and staff that are here, LIFT Fund has a presence here in Corpus Christi. They have a local office at the Del Mar campus. They received over 360 phone calls for information. The website for the application, that's how a business applies, is via application online from the LIFT Fund. As of yesterday, the LIFT Fund received 94 loans, so 94. And 80 of those loans are pretty much ready to go. All the paperwork's in. They're going to go on to the next step, which is a review for decision making, for what amount, and is it a business that's eligible to be funded. So remember I said that the loan amounts, depending on how much one borrows, we could, with the 1.7 million, get between 60 to 80 loans already with 1 day's application. We're already at 80. So with 94 applications, 94 total applications in, 80 are ready to be processed. So 4 loans of those 80 are in the final decision phase, and these businesses include an acupuncture business, a caterer, a roofer, and a tire shop. So those are the 4 that will most likely get funded first. The program has been well received. You can see by the numbers, and I think just the general conversation amongst our small businesses in the community. And people are hearing about it across the state. In fact, several other governmental entities have called us to see what we did. They want to know what we did down here in Corpus Christi, and can we send them exactly what we did so they can kind of replicate it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it goes to show that it's a well thought out and a good program. So we continue to look for alternative funding. We know that 1.7 million is probably almost all spoken for. And we're looking at ways where if the council desires and the community has the interest, we can increase the funding for that type of a program. It's a great program for this time because of that 0 payment for 4 months and no interest. And so it's targeted to those businesses that are going to survive this slight pause in commerce, and they'll be able to bounce back and make those loan payments in the future. We were also yesterday, we're following, and Tammy's going to help, Tammy Embry, but yesterday, you may be aware that Governor Abbott talked about a $50 million program, a loan program, using LIFT Fund as a conduit processor, the same folks we're using. And so Corpus Christi businesses, any business in the state that's eligible would have an opportunity to apply for these dollars as well, $50 million. In the governor's press conference yesterday, there wasn't a whole lot of detail in the program, but we'll, with Tammy's help, monitor that and get word out to the council and then the business community here too, because we want our eligible businesses to apply for that as well. And then in terms of recovery for our residential persons out there, we're looking how can we help those that are impacted either from a layoff or furlough or a reduction in hours, or a letting go altogether. You may recall, I think about a week and a half ago, we received some supplemental community development block grant and emergency solutions grant. The latter one, the emergency solutions grant, is typically used for homelessness prevention. But this special allocation we got, which is $800,000, is the rules are not quite defined yet. So we're working with Tammy again and others to see if that money would be, if it's eligible to be used for working folks that have had a reduction in pay, to help them make their utility payments. And so that could be a good way to help the community. It's $800,000 in emergency assistance grant. And that could be a good way to help homesteads, families here in Corpus Christi that have been impacted through the COVID-19 in terms of wage reduction, to have funding available and help pay their utility bills. So we'll give you more information as we move forward on that, as we talk with the federal government. Okay, and so we have been, as you know, focused, the organization has primarily on just managing the COVID and making sure we're keeping people safe. But this week, we're beginning at my office and with the help of several other staff members, to focus on our budgeting and financing, to see how this will impact our revenues and what we have to do in a compensatory way to reduce spending. We know that several Texas cities are already doing this, San Antonio, Dallas, and so on. So this morning I met with several executive leadership team members, Eddie Houlihan, our budget director, and Constance, our chief financial officer. So we're already beginning to model what does the impact of this look like on primarily our sales tax revenue. Our property tax revenue is pretty much all in for this fiscal year. It was last year's tax payments, and most of those have been made. So really the big focus is going to have to be, or will be, on our sales tax, and also other revenues like our utility fees, our 911 fees, police ticket revenue, and other funds as well, to include our hotel occupancy tax. But we're beginning to look to see what would be the worst case and best case scenario in terms of revenue reduction, and then what do we have to do to make that up. We'll be doing some in-depth reviews of the general fund. Obviously, that's where our sales tax primarily is, but we have to be mindful of the airport fund. That's going to take a big hit with the huge reduction in flights in and out of the city. We have to look at those HUT funds, working with our CVB director Brett Oding as well. Organizational wide, we have implemented kind of a review on filling positions. Even though we have somewhat of a little bit higher vacancy rate maybe than some of our peer cities in Texas, that's a good way to 80% of our spending is in resources, personnel resources. So we're putting together a vacancy review committee that will review the requesting from departments to fill what were deemed non-essential positions. And that'll help to kind of slow a little bit the spending. There'll be a committee of the budget director, Michael Rodriguez, my chief of staff, and the human resources director, to review the requests from the departments to fill positions. And these, again, are for non-essential. So positions like our water department, our solid waste, police and fire personnel, sworn personnel, those will continue to get processed as normal. But for other positions, we'll kind of review to see, can we afford to do that, and should we slow that one down just a little bit to help in some of our spending. We're going to be talking with Noe Hinojosa from Hinojosa and Estrada. We're setting that up for this week. We know that we had plans to do the bond program for 2020, and the good news on that is the bond program of over $100 million was contemplated without a property tax rate increase. And so I'm hopeful we can still do that, but we'll work with the council to get your all's opinion, and we'll get some financial advice from Hinojosa and Estrada this week to see what he's thinking there in terms of a bond program.
Would that also include, the story I'm hearing is that interest rates are next to nothing. Is there any potential for refinancing or refunding?
Yeah, so we talked to Noe actually 2-3 weeks ago, and he said all refinancings were on hold because of the bond market or the markets. But we'll re-engage him because we know that with the reduction in the interest rates, we can saved to refinance. In fact, we were already planning on doing a refinancing later this spring. And so that's on our things to talk to him about as well. But we know having the bond program will help to spur the economy, right? We have a huge engineering and construction community here in the city. And so I'm staying positive that we can continue with the bond program. We know we have the need for sure. And we know that there's no property tax rate increase for the one we contemplated. So we'll work with you on that as we go over the next couple of weeks here. And then the last thing I just wanted to report on, Mayor, is at Councilman Molina's request, we will be beginning tonight to light up Harbor Bridge in 3 different colors, separate colors though, for the next 6 nights. And so for 2 nights in a row, we'll light the bridge for first responders and our medical professionals. So the bridge tonight will be in red for our firefighters. They'll stay that for tonight and tomorrow night. And then it'll be blue for our police personnel, police first responders. That'll be Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday will be lit up in white for all of our healthcare professionals. That includes persons that work at the hospitals, but our own health professionals as well, like Annette, who was here this morning. So this is a great way, a small way to say thank you to all those frontline employees that are helping keep the community safe and healthy, and in some and maybe more than some cases, in many cases, putting their lives at risk to help others. So it was a great idea from Councilman Molina, and we'll be looking forward to the first lighting of that tonight. And so that concludes my presentation this morning, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. The public comment period normally would be, and we have the written comments that have been submitted to the council for public comment, and they are in for the record for those that submitted them, and we appreciate you doing that. We didn't want to overlook that. That's an important part of our project and our program. So they have been received. Ms. Huerta's got copies, and the council members have been provided copies.
Yes,
And
sir.
so they are here for the record. This will get us over to item G, the minutes for the regular meeting of March the 31st and April the 7th. Entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion or corrections or deletions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Did we hear from the outliers? Is our PA system not working in the conference rooms? We can't hear anything. Yeah, but you can hear him through the wall. We pay a lot.
I don't
We
have
pay a lot of
any
money for the
system.
electronics around here. We want them to work.
Go ahead, guys, try it again.
Okay, there we go. All right, we hear you there. Ms. Guajardo, are you there?
We're here.
How about Ms. Guajardo?
Looking for Paulette.
Michael?
Aye.
He's here.
Oh, he's in the room back there?
No, he's
No,
on the
he's
telephone.
online.
I'm in the cloud, Mayor.
Well, we understand that. Yeah, you set yourself up for that one.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, well, that sounds like a majority to me then, Ms. Swerton. All right, we've got a consent agenda. Oh, one other thing, Mr. Zoney, are you going to have all that report and everything back ready for next week's meeting
Report on,
on the budget plan and all this?
Oh,
It really is concerning that.
yeah, I'll do my city manager's report next week. I'll begin to have some financial numbers. Eddie Houlihan's already developed some ranges of worst and best case in terms of revenue and percent differences, but I haven't had a chance to
Well,
look
I
at
mean,
the
he
detail of
should.
them. But by next week, we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, because the second quarter's, it will be a month over by the next
Yeah.
meeting. So, I mean, he
Yeah.
should be able to punch a button and have
Yeah.
pretty accurate information.
Right, so when we look at, just take sales tax as the example, 6 months of the year, half the year is in. Our revenues are actually in.
Yeah,
So
but-
now it's just a matter of forecasting what happens over the next 6 months.
It's the next 6 months where the money's made
Yeah.
on the hotel motel tax.
Exactly, yeah. And so I asked him this morning to call some of our comparative cities in Texas to see how are they going about doing this. Is it a 50% reduction, a 60%? Look with the state. We can talk to Noe and HOSA as well.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll have some preliminary information for us. We are concerned about it every day. I think about it, but we've been focused on the medical side of this for right now. But
Right.
it's time to transition because we do have, as we know, $1 billion business we're running.
We're fighting two battles at the same time. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Okay, minutes have been approved. We don't have any board and committee appointments today. We got consent agenda items 2 through 16.
And Mayor, for the record, Councilmember Hunter is abstaining on item 15.
Okay. Hunter. All right. Well, we'll leave him up in the cloud then on that one. All right, all right, anyone have any comments or want to pull any items 2 through 16?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to pull number 3 and number 12.
Number 3, number 12. Uh, 15, I'd like to pull that one. Oh, that's right. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion on items 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, and 16.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. First one then, I think, Mr. Hernandez, excuse me?
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Hernandez, I think was 3 that you want to pull?
Yes, number 3.
3, all right, go ahead. And hold, is there, this will be for the police department. Is Chief online or?
He should be online.
Okay. Chief, are you there?
I'm here, Mayor.
Okay, item number 3 is on the sexual assault kits question that Mr. Hernandez had.
Right, Chief, I was somewhat taken aback on when I was reading this agenda memo, how many of these we have kind of in backup. Can you kind of talk to that as to why we had so many of these in the backlog?
Sure. It's first of all, let me preface with this is actually a good news item. I understand by first glance that you would say, well, there's 117 kits dating back to 2005 that haven't been done. So if I might take a minute and give the background on this, if that's okay. So in 2011, legislation changed where DPS labs wanted to catalog DNA. So previous cases that they did not take, meaning cases that the offender was known or the victim refused to prosecute, they now wanted those cases. So they asked departments statewide to send them a list of all back cases that we had evidence for and to send those in batches at their request. So over a period of time, they collected DNA samples from these backlog kits. Remember, they're not whodunits. These have been prosecuted and victim services provided and all that stuff. They're just known offenders. So in the catching up their CODIS, their DNA logs, that they wanted these kits. So we started sending them in the batches that they requested. But state ran out of money before they finished their initiative. So they last year told us don't send any more kits. So we think it's a good idea that we go ahead and finish the initiative. There's still 117 cases that need to be entered into CODIS, and I think that's a good thing. It'll help with future crimes, maybe, if these are repeat offenders. But again, none of these are whodunits. No case has gone uninvestigated. It's not that way. So that's why you see these numbers of kids. And this is statewide. This is statewide initiative.
Okay, Chief, I wanted to thank you for give you the opportunity to explain that. Just on the glance, it didn't look very appealing. So thank
I
you.
appreciate you asking that, Councilman. I'm glad I got to give that backstory.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. With that, I make a motion to approve.
All right, there's a motion second on item 3. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? All opposed? Okay, then that gets us over to item 12. Okay, and I think
Okay.
I'm the one that asked for that, or was that Gil?
That was me too.
Okay.
Okay, this is one that I kind of wanted to get to because I specifically met with our Parks and Recreation Director and the Assistant Director and did a tour of District 5 parks on March 18th. On the tour, we've identified several issues, and we actually identified two playground equipments that had to be removed for safety reasons on top of the ones that had already been removed. And if you recall, City Manager, that we had that issue where they were removed and nobody was notified.
Right.
And we have continuing issues. Now, when I first looked at this whole thing with the community enrichment funds, I was under the impression that it was for, you were giving money to the city in lieu of giving land for a community park, and that was what was done to put in place to utilize that money for regional parks. But based on the email that we got from Bryce, one of our city attorneys, that it is basically for, and I'll read it directly. This is from the UDC 8.3.6 C and D. The city accepts a fee in lieu of land. The fee shall be placed in the city's community enrichment fund and shall be used for the acquisition, improvement of neighborhood, community, and or regional parks, mostly to serve the residents of the subdivision. The park most likely will be served the subdivision and shall in no case be located more than 5 miles from the subdivision. Well, we also got these images with the park and a ring around for 5 miles. Well, the 5 miles is pretty much half the city, it seems like, when you look at it. And, for example, you could have a park, and this one, the first one is Barcelona State Unit 1, which is, I guess it looks like it's off of Costores. You could be in close to downtown and be paying for this park or be part of this park within that 5 miles. I don't know if that is necessarily how this was intended to be, but it basically makes it somewhat null and void. It doesn't matter where you are, you have to be within 5 miles, but that could, I mean, you're talking, that's a long way for a subdivision to be enjoying a park if it's 5 miles away. And so I think this is the intent of this rule is not necessarily being met by the way it's stated, because it just makes all these parks a way for us to fund every park, but it doesn't necessarily serve the subdivision where the park where they donated money in lieu of donating property. So I would like to say that it's probably something we need to review, to look at the distances, to make sure that, you know, if we're utilizing money from a specific subdivision and we're spending it on a park 5 miles away, which they will probably never use, it doesn't make sense. And it's something I'd like for us to consider in the future. Maybe reduce that amount from a 5 mile to maybe a mile, a minimum of a mile. Okay.
We can look at that, Councilman, that's no problem.
Also, you know, like I said, I thought this was for regional parks as opposed to neighborhood parks. As I understand, the idea was if you're not going to get a neighborhood park, you're putting the money into a regional park or a community, one that's for a very large park that you would actually drive to utilize. And I specifically asked for how much funding would be for the regional park at Bill Witt. And based on how this is set up and how how it's written, I don't know if you can actually determine that specifically. So is this for regional parks or is it not for regional parks? And if, you know, it's very vague on how it's written.
the law includes regional parks in the list. It says for neighborhood, community, and/or regional parks, most likely to serve the residents of the subdivision.
No, I get it, but it's so vague that it could be for anything that we want it to be, basically, as long as it's within 5 miles. And 5 miles, I mean, you look at the distances within the city. I mean, what I'm saying is that the subdivisions that donate for this, the developers put in money for this, generally get nothing out of it if it doesn't go to a regional park.
I think the community, the goal is to give park facilities to the community, and the 5 miles is with vehicles and all that today is not that.
No,
long.
I understand that.
Yeah, but I think the goal is it's to improve the park system. It could be that the money goes into a pool with no geographic boundary.
Well, that would probably be better than the way it's said here, because it's really not for regional parks directly. So if you in a subdivision and a developer donates money in lieu of a park, you don't get a neighborhood park. You have to go to the regional park or a park that's the closest one to you, but you don't necessarily get the benefit of having that park in lieu.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
We do, yeah. But the goal, though, is to have a park facility close by. And so if you have many small or big regional, it still gives that resident, that homeowner, a place to go and recreate and enjoy the park system.
So for me, there are two solutions to this. You either reduce the circle in terms of how, in terms of the distance of where it goes to, or you modify it to be more for regional parks and less for because there's really no definition. I mean, it's really not specific. So you end up with not having regional parks being funded.
Yeah, we can look at that. I mean, this fund, from what I've heard, I know it's something we have to work on, both in terms of getting clearer language and also putting the money into production. The money's been sitting there for many, many years, and that's not fair for the community either. So this agenda item, though, is consistent with the current guidelines and rules that the council have approved many, many years ago. It's legitimate, it's consistent. There was some misinformation, I think, that was put out between last night and recently, but this is on board with the intent and the letter of the ordinance. And can we look at it and modify it? Yes, we can do that. I'm hearing you. And we'll look at how we can improve it so it's clearer, or to make it so it benefits the community even greater is another way of looking at it.
Well, I'm looking at it in terms of the individuals that are actually, if you look at it, developers are putting the money in, but it's really the subdivision, the homeowners in the subdivisions that are paying for it, right? Everything gets passed down. So looking at it from the perspective of them and how they're not getting a park near to them, and it's going into this ubiquitous fund that can be for a park 5 miles away.
Right. Yeah, we'll look at that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Mr. Smith next, but anybody in the conference rooms have any comment? I don't want to overlook them.
Mayor, we were prepared to give a little presentation on these parks. There are 14 parks. We did pass out, this is Keith Selman, Assistant City Manager for the record. We did pass out to you all and forwarded this in email, a spreadsheet that identified the funding source and the org for each of the 15 parks and how the installation would be funded from those. We also forwarded to you all for each of those orgs that 5 mile radius that the council member has just referenced. And I think the council member makes a very good point from the standpoint of broad. The definition and the way it's described in the ordinance isn't vague, it's just broad when it includes neighborhood parks, community parks, and regional parks. But in this particular case, 14 different parks are going to receive these playscapes throughout the community. This is something that came to the council over a year ago with the purchasing of these playscapes. They have been sitting in storage, and we've been making preparations to come forward with the installation of those facilities. And we learned a great lesson down on Water's Edge. You may recall that had a fall zone, a padded fall zone, but underneath it did not have the structural support it needed for that pad, and we had failures on that pad and spent quite a bit of money replacing that. On these projects, all of these are going to be concrete-based material with a padded fall zone, just as you see at Water's Edge. So we're very excited about this project. It is impacting the entire community with 14 different parks seeing these installations.
Okay. Any council members in the conference rooms in the cloud want to comment before we come back to the table here?
Yes, Mayor, Councilman Roy, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I kind of would like to ditto Councilman Hernandez's remarks in that I think we need to look at this overall. I think this project, what they're looking at right now, of course, it's follow the rules, but I think in the future, we do need to come back and take a look. I have some concerns. 5 miles, you take a look at where Cow Island's located or some of the other areas, that 5 mile radius is pretty far. But I think it deserves that we go back in and take a look at this and make sure that future projects are a little bit more clear in terms of what the purpose is and how things have changed as far as development. So that's the only thing I have right now on that. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I got Mr. Smith down here's got his light on, then I got Mr. Garza.
Okay, well, thank you. I think one thing, it's a great day for the city. We're all focused on the virus, but we're going to get 14 brand-new playgrounds, first-class playgrounds. It's a big change with there. I agree with council member on there that we need to take a look at it. But I do not think the language is vague at all. The language is concise. It's broad on there. So the ordinance on my read is clear, but it's a very broad language. So it's narrowing the language to where we want to be in 2020 with it on there. And I'd like to thank staff for getting this going. And then one last thing, our Parks Director sent an email out in favor, not our Parks Director, but the Chairman of PRAC sent an email out in favor of this, and it's not in our public comment. So I hope we attach that to the record, make sure that the Dotson Lewis, the Chairman of the Parks Board, who spent a whole lot of time, along with the rest of our Parks and Recreational Advisory Committee, picking these 14 locations out and being part of that process. So it's a good day for Corpus Christi. Thanks.
Mr. Garza?
I echo the same sentiments as my Councilman Smith and also Councilman Hernandez. I've had some concerns about us not spending the community enrichment dollars the way that I believe we needed to in terms of getting some recommendations from our Parks and Rec Board and being able to put those funds out in a timely enough manner to be able to benefit the community the way it should. I do think, though, that although the language is broad and we're not doing anything illegal or under the table, I still believe that it is a good idea to review whatever the language is, and if we decide or if the Parks and Rec Board, working with staff, decides that we might want to prescribe the use of those funds so that they make a impact or actually benefit the citizens that are giving up that parkland or park space, I think that we should go ahead and review that and come up with a plan of how we might be able to prescribe the use of those funds going forward. But I think this is a great day. I'm happy to see the recommendations of both the park board and the staff to come up with a plan to be able to make improvements to those 14 parks. So again, I'm grateful for the efforts of staff. Most of my questions were answered today by Assistant City Manager Selman. So again, I feel comfortable with what we're doing today, but I also think that there's some ways to do things a little bit better going forward, particularly when those funds might become a little bit more scarce going forward in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Molina?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with the comments made by my colleagues. Just a quick question. Of the 14 parks, what's the timeline on the installation of all the equipment?
6 months.
Is that 6 months?
Yeah, you all just said it. Jermel Stevenson, Parks and Recreation Director. It is 6 months, Councilman.
6 months for all 14 units?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wartho, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. So I was knocked off here for a minute, so I apologize if this was already brought up, but I missed a large part of the conversation. But I definitely echo what I've heard so far here, the last few comments. A couple of things I think we have to remember in Mr. Selman moving forward. Just one of the most important things, obviously, which has been said, is making sure everybody knows exactly what these funds are for and what park development means. But I agree with Councilman Smith. I think it means, improving the park, and the intent too. There's an intent to this particular, to these guidelines and to this fund, these monies. And I think we all know what that intent is. And that's to spend money in our parks in the right way for the right reasons. And that's all of our intents up here. That said, Mr. Selman, could you give us just a quick, or Mr. Stevenson, a quick, just a little update on Bill Witt? If you hadn't, maybe you already had. I got knocked off of the meeting here for a few minutes, so I'm not sure if you did. But Bill Witt Park is of concern to me in regards to these funds.
We are, this is Keith Selman, Assistant City Manager. We're putting that together as well. The request of Councilmember Hernandez was to put together how much money is available out there for Bill Witt under the restricted resources under the community enrichment. We're putting that together and assembling that. Should have that to the council in pretty short order.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, just one question jogged my memory a little bit. One of the questions I think came up, and maybe this is kind of what got all this started, getting something done with these community enrichment funds, is a portion, if not a substantial portion of this money has been accumulated over the years by developers and this sort of thing, putting money into the fund. Is that correct? And then it goes to different projects?
Right, that's correct, Mayor.
But there's also, is there not a provision that after 7 years or 10 years or something, if nothing's done, then they get their money back?
Right.
They have to apply for it within the requisite time period to be entitled to get the money back.
All right. Well, this fund started years ago, and I think probably the developers are the people that actually created this fund to make a contribution to the community and help the city. With today's world of computerized equipment versus people, I can see where if this started 25, 30, 40 years ago, I'm not sure when this fund actually got started and this process started. The person in charge today may retire in 2 years, and then somebody down the road didn't know it, and so it was in a file, and the developer may have forgotten all about it and whatever. But in today's world, there's computers that you can program to send you notification 50 years from now at a certain date to remind you something's coming due. So I think it's pretty important that if the rules still are that after 7 years they're eligible for a refund of that money, then we ought to have something in there that triggers a notification at the end of 6 years to that developer or to the owner of that piece of property that gave up that fund, that if you want to request a refund, that you do that. I mean, I've talked to one or two folks out in the Bluff, for instance, that had to give money up years ago to get a street put in, and the street never has been put in yet. And they're wondering, how do I get my money back? Well, I didn't have an answer for her. But
Mayor, this is Keith again. What we can do is, by the end of this week, provide a memo to the council outlining exactly how the ordinance is structured, how the monies are released, and how they are spent. You are correct. We do look to spend this on a first in, first out basis.
Well, I mean, and it may all be done within the 7-year period. I don't know. There may not be anybody out there waiting, but I mean, I suspect there's going to be some money in there that's been there longer than 7 years. Is that right or not? Hello?
What was your question again, Mayor?
I don't doubt that first in, first out, I mean, that would be the smart thing to do, so you wouldn't subject yourself to the refund. But and it may not be in this fund, but I mean, if there's a rule there ought to be some system that says, okay, this money, we've held it way longer than we should, either through oversight or we just didn't have a plan or, different priorities, and that money ought to be refunded as opposed to just being captured and spent any way we want to.
I don't think it's.
But anyway, I don't know, you may not, and I haven't had a chance to look at your reports. I just got handed this printout today, and that probably doesn't have it in there.
Mayor, it's Roland. If I might add, I'm opposed to, it seems the policy we have in place is a you snooze, you lose policy. And, we really need to look at remedying that, because especially if we've got developers that have been consistently invested in the community and we don't have some type of system. I mean, even the comptroller's office has a lost property website where you can go back and look, and there's funds that maybe never got to you. I mean, I just think it's wrong that if they fail to apply and it's been 6 years and once again, you snooze, you lose. It doesn't sound appropriate at all.
Well, that's what I say. I mean, the recommendation today is in compliance with our program.
Yes,
I think
sir.
we need to look at that to see if we can't modernize it. And in the event there is somebody that has money sitting there that meets the criteria to get a refund, then we ought to give it to them. If not, then I don't know whether does it go to the individual or to the piece of property?
It goes to the end user right now, the way it's crafted, Mayor, the homeowner. But we can look at that in this redraft.
All right. I don't have a problem with what
you're
you're doing today, and I think everything's been accounted for, and we've gone through the audits, if I recall.
Yes, sir.
And, but anyway, I just think going forward, we really need to make sure with all the technology we've got today that we ought to be able to end this you snooze, you lose game.
Yes,
Okay,
sir, Mayor. We hear the council loud and clear.
Is there that's item 12, was it?
Move to approve.
All right, there's a motion and a second on item 12. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And, okay, Michael got it. All right, number 15 is item on the insurance, and Mr. Hunter is going to abstain from discussion on item number 15 because I think.
We do, and our brokers should be on the phone call as arranged by Peter Collins if we need to pipe them in, the Carlisle groups.
Mayor,
Okay.
have a presentation, and our broker is available, and our risk manager is also available. Our risk manager is online on the in the separate room, but I don't see him appearing here. So, but the presentation should be here coming up pretty soon if they can manage that in the back. Otherwise, I have copies of the presentation to hand out. Okay, renewal of property insurance. This is a resolution authorizing renewal of property insurance for an annual premium of $2.886 million for the upcoming year. City no longer bids out its own insurance. For the last 5 years, the city has done broker of record, where instead of doing a specific bid at the city level, the broker of record goes to the markets separately and puts together our insurance package. The city now currently contracts with Carlisle Insurance until December 15th of this year, and we're going out for proposals for a new broker of record or a renewal of that broker of record. The city's property insurance program coverage covers other perils, flood, earth movement, wind, named storm, and equipment breakdown. The city's property insurance program is a multi-layered program. That means we have multiple underwriters covering our risk because it's so large. The city's schedule of insured property includes other specialty insurance type risks. The city also purchases some flood insurance through the broker of record. In this last year, we've seen insurance market conditions deteriorate. The past 3 years hardened the property insurance market. Last year, we estimated we'd have a 15 to 20% increase. We got a 4% increase, but now we're paying the piper. Now it's come due with those big increases. For the past few years, so what we're seeing is the accrual of a couple of years of built-in increases in the property market. Premium history. Our total insured value has been approximately $700 million. Our property rate started in fiscal year 16-17 at 28.7 cents per hundred, and it will now be 40.83 cents with a 31.7% increase. And the premium is changed from the prior year. We initially saw decreases for the first three years of our last 5 years. And we saw a 7.3% increase in 18-19, then a 4% increase, and now a 31.7% increase. The all-risk limit has remained stable for the past 5 years, and the named storm limit has remained stable. And what really drives our insurance cost is the windstorm. You can see graphed our property rate. Our total rate went down initially in that first of the 5 years, and now we're trending back upwards. And in this last year, trending upwards significantly. All risk deductible. We carry a fairly high deductible, $50,000 per occurrence. Our flood is $100,000 per occurrence. We have a named storm deductible of 2% of total insurable values at the loss at each location involved, arising for a minimum of $100,000 on any one occurrence and a max of $4 million on any one occurrence. Our wind hail is $50,000, earth movement $50,000. Our named storm is what we tend to focus on the most. Here's a comparison that Carlisle provided to other governmental entities. Our upcoming premium per $100 is going to be 40.83 cents per year. This will be slightly lower than the premium that is in the ISD, which is 45.98 cents per year. The Port of Corpus Christi has a 47.48 cent per year, and the City of Beaumont, another coastal entity, has 56.98 cents per year. And what this represents, though largely, is that is the risk analysis and the age of the buildings and the number of windows in each building, as well as the materials that the buildings are made out of. Are there any questions?
So you build a
I have a
building.
question. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I have a quick question. Miles, what, or Tommy, either one, what part of that premium, where's the total premium now? I don't know if I saw it on your slide there.
What's that?
What's the total annual premium?
$2.886 million. Actually, $2.871 million.
871. What part of that, Tommy, would be windstorm? Because it's all included, correct?
I'm gonna let Chase answer that if we're possible first.
Okay.
It's hard to estimate, but if we had to give educated guess, the windstorm majority of your premium, it's probably 90% of that premium. The fire risk on a schedule such as this nature with buildings spread out through the city, we may have one building go down, but you're not going to have the full 700 million affected on a fire. So the majority of the risk for the insurance companies is on widespread disasters such as a hurricane.
Okay. And this is through TWIA?
No, ma'am. This is through
It's inclusive.
17
Okay.
carriers in the open market. No TWIA
great.
only policy at all.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Smith, did you? Any other comments other than it couldn't come at a worse time? 31% increase, but I mean, it is what it is. Yes, sir, Mr. Carter.
Have we had any claims over the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years?
Yes, we had several post-Harvey claims.
Okay. And then the last question is, at what point or what percentage, I know insurance is different, but at what point or what percentage increase does that trigger us going out for an RFQ or RFP in this particular case for?
We're doing that anyway this year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Move to approve.
Well, the unfortunate thing is it's going up 31% for the city. But when you throw in the increase that's going in over at if you're in CCISD or anybody else that's doing this, you're also going to get hit there too. So the ratepayers in the city it's going to be a rough ride. So, all right, any other discussion?
Mayor, I might want to add, I know we had talked about, there was mention of an RFQ or an RFP. I mean, Carlisle has already gone through that process, and, of course, this isn't my bailiwick, but from my colleagues in the industry, that's what we've heard, with all the disasters worldwide. It's unfortunate, as you say, but as it is what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, this hasn't been critical of Carlisle. I mean, they're just messengers. They're finding people to buy it from, I guess, and putting it together and getting the best deal they can. So anyway, it is what it is. We got to have it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
And Hunter abstains.
And Mr. Hunter abstained. All right, that goes under 15. Let's see, we got a public hearing. The next item, well, it says lunch at 1:30, but it's not 1:30, so we're kind of like Pavlov's dog. We don't go till the bell rings, so we'll wait till 1:30. There's a public hearing, item 17. It's a zoning case, MPM Development, on property out at 7797 Yorktown Road. The Planning Commission and the staff recommend approval, and who's going to make this
Mayor, this
presentation?
is Al Raymond, Director of Development Services. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The case before you is to rezone property located at 7797 Yorktown Boulevard from FR Farm Rural District to RS 4.5 Single Family 4.5 District. The purpose is to allow for construction of a residential subdivision. The applicant is MPM Development LP, represented by Moses Matstagashi. Next slide, please. The property is located along the east side of Pearson Drive, south of Yorktown Boulevard, and west of Starry Road. The property primarily fronts along Ranch View Drive, which is designated as a local residential street. To the north is a residential subdivision zoned RS 4.5. To the south is the Oso Creek. To the east and west are vacant, unplatted properties zoned FR Farm Rural District. The subject property is 89.23 acres in size, and it is not platted. The subject property consists of vacant land and has been undeveloped since annexation in 1995. Next slide, please. The proposed rezoning to RS 4.5 is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, compatible with the surrounding properties, and it does not pose a negative impact on the general area. Next slide, please. And as you said, Mayor, Planning Commission and staff recommend approval of RS 4.5 Single Family District.
All right, is that your presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right, got questions? Anyone from the conference room have any questions? Council members?
Mayor, just for the record, Councilmember Roy's abstaining.
All right, Everett Roy is going to abstain on this item. Anyone from the out in the cloud got a question? If not, we'll go to Mr. Garza.
Sorry, Mayor, that was from last time.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you. Question on, there's I guess there was a gun range there, the Starry shooting range. Is that still active?
As far as I know, sir, yes, it is.
Okay, is that going to be an issue in terms of zoning? I mean, what is there going to be a problem there?
There is no prohibition with respect to zoning. I don't think so. There is no prohibition with respect to zoning.
Miles?
They have a continued right to operate that gun range.
Ooh.
Okay. I want to piggyback on that, but go ahead with
Okay.
your comment.
The other question I have is that we were in discussions about the location of Oso Parkway and how that's going to reflect in this area. Have you had discussions on that?
Have we?
Yes, sir. This is Andrew Demas, also with Development Services. Yes, a realignment has already occurred in conjunction with the Planning Department to set the new location of Oso Parkway, which will be along the Oso itself.
Okay. Those are the questions I had. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Mr. Raymond, I didn't see anything in our packet, maybe I overlooked it, about the flood zones. How much of this property is in the velocity zone, how much is in the 100-year zone, and how much is in the 500-year?
This particular property is not in the special flood hazard area, so none of those requirements will apply to this development. You did send me an email also, I think, requesting information about the 2-foot freeboard, and at your direction, I think you were the impetus behind us getting members of the development community together late last year, and we had discussions on that issue, and ultimately the group decided to table making decisions on a 2-foot freeboard until they could do that in conjunction with stormwater master planning. They felt it would be obviously better, everyone would be better informed if we were talking about 2-foot freeboard and doing stormwater master planning at the same time. So we've tabled that, and as you know, we have in the works, hopefully here soon, an RFQ for master planning and other items.
Thank you on that. It may be sheer coincidence, but we've sure seen a lot of property along the Oso Creek in the 100-year flood zones come before. I can think of 3 tracks right off the top of my head in the last 4 months, and here we've got another one. And last Friday, we had Dr. Philippe Trousseau come to this chamber and talk about the COVID virus. The last time he was here, he talked about the importance of raising the freeboard. He's not an expert on the virus, but he is an expert on sea level rise and flooding. And I'm just concerned that I don't think they were reached out to, that we keep pushing this issue down the road. In the meantime, we build up all the property with hazardous areas. And one reason that I'm a big believer in this is when the homeowners buy out there, their insurance will be reduced. For every foot above BFE, you get a drop in your rates, a substantial drop in your rates. So what we're doing by going in at the lower building elevation, we're subject, the homeowners, for however long those homes will be there, will be subject to a higher rate because we're saying, well, that's okay on there. We're also seeing, we saw the Harvey effect on Mustang Island within Corpus Christi, that we had flooding outside of the 100-year, above the 100-year. The cost when you do a development is relatively inexpensive to add that extra foot. It's more when you build the house, but when you develop it like we are right now, that's part of your cut and fill when you're doing your design on there. And then the one last thing is we're moving into flood zones. We seem to be okaying 4.5 zoning. So not only are we going into a hazardous area on there, we're putting the max density on residential by doing this. And I think it'll be after my time when you get that inevitable flood, but it will happen on there. That we had the 1916, we had a storm, the 1916 storm on there. Everybody thought we got a pass. It was a Cat 4, kind of like Harvey was. Then 3 years later, you had 1919 that flooded out this city. And we get that other 1919, the pass that we got on Harvey. We could see all these areas that we're saying, a foot, no big deal. So really, I haven't seen the information, how much of this tract is within that 100-year flood zone, how much is truly subject to it. I'd like to either wait on this, or I'm not in favor of 4.5, putting high-density residential in an area that has potentially hazardous. Thank you.
Okay, my question was, of course, that the freeboard, that's really, I mean, the problem, I mean, I was first saying you got to disclose it, but if the homeowner doesn't become the homeowner until after the property's been built, so they really don't have any decision whether or not to have that freeboard. But can we, because I can see down the road, this place get all built out, and I have no idea. I'm assuming that the Story Gun Range is planning on being there for a long time. It's been there a long time. They were there first. I think there has to, can we tie a requirement that a disclaimer be made to the developer, by the developer, or the realtor representing the people selling houses out there, that this property is located next to a gun range, just for information. Just like in the real estate business today, you have to disclose if somebody's died in the house. You have to disclose any number of items that might have an impact on somebody wanting to live in that house. And you don't want somebody building out a nice residential neighborhood, and then people get to, kind of like building out next to the airport and then complaining you hear airplanes. So you've got to disclose to people, okay, you're gonna have a lovely house out here, but you're gonna hear a lot of gunfire. And then all of a sudden, a year later, they get to raising Cain about there's too much gunfire out there. Well, I'm sorry, the gun range has been there forever, and it shouldn't have to go into restrictions because somebody else encroached on their ability to provide the service they've been providing. So can it be a requirement that we put on the developer or the realtors, the developer, because he's going to be developing the property and selling the first time those home buyers, they may have owned a home otherwise, but those are going to be new houses, and so there's nobody to disclaim it to other than the developer.
That might be problematic as part of a zoning case, because that's not really before you today. What if you want to talk about modifying the UDC to provide for such a mandatory disclaimer? We could look into whether or not that would be preempted by any of the state law provisions. We could look into that, but I would be skeptical of doing that for today.
Well, in real estate law, you have to disclose if somebody's been murdered in the house or has died in the house, as I understand it. Because some people, for whatever phobia or whatever thought, but they don't want to live in a house that somebody's died in. So you have to disclose that. And I guess you have to disclose other things too. It's been a while since I've had a real estate license, but I know that there has to be all kind of disclosures. And I can assure you, I mean, we get people complaining now about houses going over Cabinets Field. I mean, Cabinets Field has been here before I was. But, you know, so I can see a real problem in the future. I may be gone by then. I will be from the council. I may be gone from the earth by then too, but depending on how long it takes this to get built out, people are going to be complaining about hearing gunshots over there.
Yeah, Mayor, can I interject real quick on that?
Sure.
So I'm wondering, to Miles' point, do we know if some of these developers have even discussed buying them out in terms of their property? And and I don't know the answer to that, but that would be something we need to find out, because for all we know, they would sell out maybe to one of these developers and say, you know what, take the land. I'm being, maybe felt like they're being encroached upon. I mean, these gun shooting places are typically out in the middle of nowhere, which is, you know, almost becoming our central to an extent, or to a point, here in our city, this area. But anyway, that said, my point is, I don't think we know yet what could be the plans of the people that own this business, and also what are their operating hours? You know, do they stay open till? I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. But I think Miles, you're right. I think we need to have discussion on it, and I think you are too, Mayor. It's something that we need to address, opposed to not. But I think today, you know, there's development all around that area and that shooting range. I think it's definitely a discussion that we probably need to bring the developers into as well. Just my thoughts.
Well, the gun range has been there a long time before this development was, so I don't think we ought to be doing anything. I mean, he may want to sell out. We don't know what the future holds, but we do know what is there today, and it should not have any negative impact on his ability to operate a business that he's been operating for years.
Decades.
Just because somebody else is moving in and doesn't like it. They were, on this case, he was there first. So, that's all you can't, but, so do we need to table it, or do we need to move forward and talk with them? You say the UDC, I don't like the UDC too much, but if that's the only vehicle. And then this freeboard thing, we've had the people down here from well, I don't know, it really bothers me that he's more known for his flooding than he is his coronavirus, but yet we listened to him the other day. But after all their study, the conclusion was social distancing works. So did we pay a whole lot for that study, or was this all volunteer? Well, I didn't get an answer. But anyway, there may be something to this, that they've got to do some land site work in here about that freeboard area, but I don't know.
Mayor, this is Al Raymond, Director of Development Services. I just wanted to add one thing. The issues that Councilman Smith brought up, we understand, we're not pushing it aside. However, this particular preliminary plat, the developer is not putting any development in what would be the 100-year floodplain or the wetland area. So he's out of that, right? So the development that is to come is really kind of out of the area of concern, although the freeboard discussion we still want to have sometime in the future, but this particular zoning case shouldn't be held up because of that, I think.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
We just need to open the public hearing, Mayor. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Open and close it.
I'll open the public hearing on item number 17. And is the applicant on the phone or online or in the cloud?
No, sir.
And this is Moses, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a good, responsible developer. Discussion has nothing to do with the developer. It's the development that we're concerned about. So,
Yeah.
Is anyone here on behalf of Moses or himself or representative? Anyone else in the public want to make comments in the public comment period?
There were no public comments submitted in writing, Mayor, for the record.
Mayor, I just want to add that the city owns property somewhere in this area that we bought years ago for a potential, I think, a sewer treatment plant or lift station at least. So,
well, that and the gun range, that might do it.
We're not building. I think the current plan is not to put either a lift or a treatment plant there. But so the reason for me bringing it up is you may see this map again at some point if the city decides to do something with that property.
All right.
Yeah.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, there's a second.
Close.
All right,
Close
Moses,
the
you've just
public
been
hearing.
disclaimed that there's a sewer plant coming your way, maybe. All right, we'll close the public hearing. Entertain a motion for passage on item number 16. No,
We've-
15.
We did.
17.
17, all right. I'm looking up there.
Yeah, Ms.
17.
Fajardo made one.
All right.
Motion.
There's a motion and a second. All in
Who
favor?
seconded?
And
Thank you,
it-
Gil.
recommended by the planning commission and the staff. All in favor, say aye.
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 And
All
Roy ab-
opposed?
Oh, nay. for
Aye.
All right, Smith is nay, and everybody, and some,
And Roy abstains.
Everett Roy abstained.
Right.
So 17 passes, 7-1-1, right?
Yes.
Okay.
7-1, one abstention.
All right, items 18 through 21. We don't want to do all these all in one thing. You want to go each one, right?
It's up to you, Mayor. You can pull one if you want a presentation, or you can go one at a time. It's up to the council. These they'll come back again next week. These are all first readings.
Well, I'd entertain a motion then on it. If we're going to do them all at one time, that's fine, but I'd like to pull 21.
Yeah, we should go over 21 at a minimum.
All right, item 18 is granting a purchase of personal protective equipment grant from Plains All-American Pipeline for $4,000 for purchase for the fire department, which is very nice.
Yeah, that's a good news.
Number 19 is renewing, amending a lease with the yacht club.
The Padre Island.
And then Padre Island Yacht Club.
Yeah.
And then a easement for construction of a yard on, out on Corn, where is it up there? That's O.N. Stevens Treatment Plant area.
Right.
So anybody have any discussion on 18, 19, or 20? Entertain a motion for items 18, 19, and 20 as one.
Move to approve.
There's a motion and a second.
Second.
Any comment? Any public comment?
We didn't receive any comments on those, Mayor.
No comments received from the public on that from Ms. Huerta. All right, all in favor of items 18, 19, and 20, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, item 21 is something the council has been involved in and getting it back on board. So, Mr. Zanoni, or you, or Mr. Collins, or who's going
Yeah,
to make
Peter
the...
Collins has a short presentation. This has some, the ordinance is brought before you because it has some minor adjustments in language that we had in the prior ordinance that council approved in terms of setting the rate. So Peter Collins will go over that, but we also just want to highlight to make it clear what is the winter quarter average, what months exactly. So Peter should be queued up and is going to go through a short presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Peter Collins, IT Director. I have a short presentation about what entails the months that are being utilized for winter quarter average. Next screen, please. The goal of this is to update the actual ordinance that was done a number of months ago to make sure it reflects of actually how winter quarter average is being calculated. So we're going to update the ordinance in regard to the calculation for winter quarter average, which is used to calculate residential wastewater charges. Next. Winter quarter average. Usage months for December, January, February, and March. This is due to overlap in billing cycles. In other words, we don't bill everybody on the first of the month. We have 20 different billing cycles that overlap into months. So if you look on the left side of this graph, you see the usage months of December, January, January to February, February to March. The billing months are January, February, and March. We still use a 3-month period, but it is offset because of the way the billing cycles are constructed. Next one. So winter quarter average calculation itself actually divides water consumption over the usage months by the number of days to get a daily average. Once we have that daily average, we multiply it by 30, and then we have the winter quarter average. Any questions? But I also want to reflect in the ordinance, there is a change as written today in section 1B, subsection 1 definitions. It should read, instead of the initial winter quarter average in wastewater charge period occurs during the months December through February, it's actually December through March to reflect what I just said. Also, if you move to subsection 2, item number 2, under C, we need to make the same corrections. December and the latest reading in March. Are there any questions?
But for clarification, the collection of data for the usage was December, January, and February.
Yeah, with some spillover into March. If there's somebody, because there's 20 billing cycles, they do not all start on the first of the month. So some customers will spill into a little bit of March timeframe, yes.
So the billing cycle is different, but the gathering of data was for the same time period.
Yes,
Pretty
Mayor.
close, yeah, pretty close. December, for sure, all of December, all of January, all of February, and for some customers, because it'd be less in December, a little bit more in March is what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, based on the billing cycle.
Yeah. It's,
Okay.
So
And
this,
this, and then so your first billing cycle that will reflect going back to winter averaging will be the billing cycle beginning May 1st. And then,
Mayor, this is Peter. Actually, we always bill a month behind. So actually, the first reflection of using winter quarter average in our bills will be in June for May.
okay. So May then will be calculated on the new rate, but you won't get that till June.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. All right, so for the public's information, beginning May the 1st, your stormwater, no,
sewer.
your
Sewer.
your wastewater
Yeah.
will be based on your winter average in May, and then in June, you'll get the bill for that.
Right. That's right, Mayor.
Okay, and that's what we want to get back to. So you should see some, in some cases, you'll see some relief, in some cases you won't. There might, just be honest with you. But there will be some changes beginning in your June billing.
That's correct, Mayor. And just to point out, the reason Peter Collins is there with our water utility team, you can see Reba and Kevin, is that he has been working with them on testing, making sure the data gets into the system correctly, the N4, our computerized system. And so he's been doing a battery of tests and making sure when we send that first bill out in June, it's 100% accurate. So we appreciate Peter helping out.
You're
That's why he
confident in
presented
that
it.
100%, Peter Collins?
Yes, Mayor. I didn't even flinch.
Peter's been up long nights on this, just like we have with COVID. This is his COVID.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate all y'all's work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Entertain a motion for approval of item
Mayor,
21.
we need to amend it, so motion to amend to include the two amendments as stated by Mr. Collins. So
All
we're
right.
going to change
Go over
February to
those
March.
amendments.
So the amendment was to, in section 1, section 55-100, under B1A, we're changing where it says through the months of December 2019, it should be through March 2020.
Okay.
And then the same change is made under section 2C2, the same change. It's the latest reading in March.
Move
instead of
to amend.
February.
All right, there's a motion to amend,
Second.
and there's a second. All in favor of the motion to, any discussion on the motion to amend? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, item 21 passes. No briefing items. We do have executive session, just one, or did we end up with two? Well, let's see, Ms. Huerta, did you give me the language I'm supposed to read here that we go into
did.
executive session? Huh?
On page 5.
First, oh, okay, you got it up here in the middle. All right, the council then, we're gonna go to, back to item K. It's about 1:30, which will be lunchtime. So the council will go into executive session for item 22 per the Texas Government Code, section 551.071. And we'll return, and that'd be our lunch break. It's 1:25 now. We'll try to be back by 2 o'clock. That's emphasis on try. But we'll recess for item K, which is a recess for lunch, and also executive session for item 22. Call the meeting back to order. The executive session's completed. No action required on the update on our EPA issues. I think the manager indicated potentially at next meeting he'd bring us kind of a review and update and a game plan on addressing our financial situation for the second half of the year.
Right.
At our
we'll do
next
that
meeting.
Next Tuesday, we'll do that, Mayor.
Anybody else have any other agenda items future agenda items they want to mention here? If not,
Mayor just said that we're not meeting on April the 28th, just so that's clear. We had canceled that meeting previously. Yeah,
All
the
right.
28th. Just want to
So
make
there's no
that.
council meeting on the 28th?
Right, just so we could announce.
Okay.
Oh, well,
So we'll have a meeting next week, and then, yeah, that'll be the final one for April.
All right.
Yeah.
And then there'll be the 5 o'clock press conference update
Right.
on the coronavirus.
Yeah, we're continuing
information.
those 5 o'clock press briefings today. The mayor and Barbara Canales, Judge Barbara Canales will be in attendance. We're also going to have Dr. Ramachandruni, our local health authority, talk to the audience today.
Okay.
And then Friday, Texas A&M Corpus Christi scientists will be here again to update their model and projections, so that'll be a good one. That'll be at 5 o'clock also. And look for the color red tonight, right on the bridge. Red for our firefighter first responders.
All right. Well, and I think the weather is kind of a good lesson in that things change pretty quickly here in South Texas. It was 90 degrees on Friday or Saturday and back in the 60s and 70s. So things change here pretty quick. But anyway, anybody else have anything? Ms. Smith, did you button from the previous number? Or if nothing else, then we will thank you all out there in the cloud and the hinterland for being with us today. We're glad you could participate in the meeting. Council members too.
Thank you, guys and lady.
All right, and so we'll be adjourned.